So part 2 of our trip in Israel sent us from the Sea of Galilee down to Bet Shan, the ruins of a huge Roman city that was there. You can see the amphitheater, the agora, the marketplace, the palladium, and the bathhouses are there in the upper right. Just a beautiful place. We, of course, had to hike up the hill to be able to get the nice overview look of everything. But just so neat to be able to see all these ruins and so much of it intact and be able to see what a city would have been like back in those days. This was only the first stop for the day, though, and it was a nice, cool, crisp morning. But from there, we were going to be heading on down the road into the desert. Okay, so the fence marks the edge of no man's land. That's Jordan out there.
It's what we call a smart fence. What do you mean by a smart fence? It's electric, but not electronic, but not electric. Meaning, if you touch it, you won't get an electric shock, but it will send a signal to some operation room somewhere, and they will send soldiers or patrol to check out what's going wrong.
This is the other baptism site that's used. You can see monasteries there and lots of reeds. Get an idea of what the Jordan River looks like here. We'd probably call it just a very large creek. After visiting Bethany on the Jordan, we then went out a little bit more into the desert and went to Qumran. This is where the famous Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. You can see all the caves up in the hillside there. And just an incredibly neat place to be able to visit for me, who is a major history nut. This was just so cool to be able to stand out there. Now, we were really blessed. Normally, at the time of year we were here, the temperatures would be in the hundreds, and it was actually a relatively cool day. It was probably 80 degrees. But here you can see just how close those caves are to the Dead Sea, because that is the Dead Sea right there. Not far away at all. And you can see the visitor center and everything, but just to be able to look at where these scrolls were found was just a marvel. There's the ruins of the ancient Qumran city and settlement that were there. But as part of that, we also got a look at the cave where the most famous of the Dead Sea Scrolls was discovered. This is actually where the very first scrolls were. They call it Cave 1. And to get a look right there, but you can see it's in the middle of nowhere. But that helped preserve them. So just an incredibly fascinating stop. This was actually one of the places that my wife and I have been looking forward to through the whole trip. So it was really, really exciting to be able to stop there and see it.
Was also part of Jordan. So they hired a cool biblical institute. These are Dominican French monks, very educated, and the father.
After Qumran, then we headed on down to where we were staying at the Dead Sea itself. This is our resort area. Yes, you can see the huge pool. They'd actually expanded the Dead Sea down to this area, but you can see the salt on the rocks. It's just caked there. And of course, we had to go for a float. You can't sink in the water here. Notice she's laying flat out. That's not shallow ground. She's not laying on the ground. She's floating. The next day, it was off to Masada. Masada was another place I've been looking forward to, taking the cable car up to the top of this fortress where the ancient Israelites had defended themselves against the Roman army. This is a really, really squished ride.
Yes.
Margaret's kind of hiding there. But I have this feeling we might get some entertainment. I can't move. This is the day they were celebrating all the bat mitzvahs and the bar mitzvahs. So they're up on the top of Masada, coming to the synagogue up there and celebrating. We had one group ride with us, but there were several others that were also celebrating up at the top of Masada. Very neat to be able to experience that. And the views from the top, oh my goodness. Yes, that's the Dead Sea.
So that pile of rocks they had gathered to use as weapons against the Romans.
Remains of the Roman war machine, assault machine, a rampart that they built here. And as you can see, this rampart didn't reach the summit 70 meters lower. It's like 200 feet lower than the summit. They could not finish it because of the fire, because the zealots were throwing rocks at them. And you know, for zealots, it was also a moral issue, because who was building this rampart?
Gentiles.
The war slaves. No, the war slaves, Jews, their own brethren, and that's why for them it was a moral issue.
Can I say something?
This is actually looking down at Herod's palace that's at the end of Masada, and the view that he would have had. Incredible. Now the cable car is how you get up and down, but you can see when there's not as many people in the cable car, the views. Those squares on the ground are actually the foundations of the Roman military camps when they besieged Masada. You can actually see where those camps were and the fortresses they built to protect themselves from the Israelites on top throwing things down at them. How cool was that? And the view, there's the visitor center where we're heading to. Just an incredible time up there. So we head down the mountain, and then of course we get another look back up the mountain as we make our way down. I know where they're going. Woohoo! After Masada, we headed down to Ein Gedi.
So this is Ein Gedi. This is where David hid in the cave from Saul, when Saul was pursuing him. Then Saul went off to relieve himself, and David cut off a part of his robe, where he could have killed him, and he didn't. It was right up in here. This is the middle of the desert. This is only about a 15-minute drive away from Masada. And here in the middle of the dead desert, you can see the waterfall pouring down. Now the rest of the group, they've hiked on up because there's two more waterfalls up near the top. And I had to bail on that, unfortunately. But you see people come here and they jump in, get wet, forget to take off their electronics, and wash in the cool, refreshing waterfall. And yes, the goats are still here. There are ibex around. And just really neat to see them around too. And that's where Ein Gedi gets its name from. It's baby goat.
Now we said the baby goats. Well, here's a look at the goats. Actually, the ibex that lives in the area. This is a couple of adults that were wandering around, and yeah, you could almost walk right on up to them.
Showing us its best side.
We weren't going to bother them, but they're that close, and nothing between you and preventing them from coming to you or the babies. Aww. After that, it was off to Jerusalem. And first stop, the Mount of Olives and the view. Oh my goodness, this was our first stop in the viewing. You can see the ancient Jewish cemetery that's all at the base, but there is the Temple Mount, the Dome of the Rock, the Western Wall, the Southern Ruins, Mount Hermon, Garden of Gethsemane down below. Just incredible to think that we were actually there and looking right at it. Of course, we had to get our pictures, but this was what we had been waiting for. After stopping up there to take pictures, we decided to walk down the hill, and it's steep, to the Garden of Gethsemane. You can see the handrails there. Yes, you needed those handrails because that walk, the stones were slick after centuries of being walked upon, and so it was very easy to slip. At the bottom of the hill is the Garden of Gethsemane. Beautiful garden. You can see the huge ancient olive trees. They have one there that dates to the time of Christ. But just beautiful gardens. You can imagine Jesus praying in this area as he looked up to the walls of the city there. And this is what they claim is the stone that he prayed at on his last night. Beautiful chapel built around it, and nice and quiet so people can come in and pray and meditate. And think about that last night of his life. Another look at the chapel, and you can see all the paintings and alcoves, the marble, stained glass, just a beautiful little chapel. Not the first of the beautiful chapels you'll see. There was more coming up the next day in Bethlehem, where we would go to see where Jesus was born. Yes, Christmas carols in the Shepherd's Chapel. After spending time at the Shepherd's Chapel and Cave, we headed over to the Church of the Nativity. Beautiful old building. There's actually 3 churches here, but they're all built around the place where they say that Jesus was born and laid in a manger. You could see the centuries of history that is here. All the dark grime is actually just aging, and they're gradually working on restoring a lot of this. But this is all right around that little cave that is right down there where they believe that Mary laid Jesus after he was born. What was really cool about this is we were some of the very first ones there. Our guide for the day got us in quick and early, so we were able to come down and get pictures and pose and look around. And by the time that we were all done and we headed back upstairs, oh, would that change? This is a look at what you come upstairs. You can see just the incredible, overwhelming amount of stuff that is there. The censers hanging down and the decorations and all the people over the centuries that have added so much to this to show their faith. But it was after we looked at that we realized how blessed we were when we got there when we did, because then we got to look at the line. The line. Oh my goodness. We walked right on in, didn't have to wait for anybody. And when we came out, that is all the people waiting to go and see what we had just seen. It went from no wait to well over an hour. So thank you so much to having a good guide and a small group that got us in and out. Later on that day, we headed over to the Israel Museum, where we got to see a giant model of Old City Jerusalem. But you can also see that weird-looking shape in the back. That is where they keep the Dead Sea Scrolls. And that was where we were going to be heading later that day. That was the close of our day. They didn't allow any filming or pictures taking in there, but just an incredible place. The Israel Museum is the one place that I really wish we had been able to spend a lot more time. But awesome trip. Awesome trip. And more to come. That's right. There's going to be a part 3 that's going to show all the neat stuff in Jerusalem.